something all of us have right by our pocket at all times. Cell phones. Something that pretty much none of us can ever leave the house without. Cell phones. Something that you can take a picture and instantly connect with the whole virtual web in an entire minute. Cell phones. Something that we become so connected with that we become disconnected from the surroundings happening right before us. Cell phones. Something that you can see a post on Instagram from your favorite ex or that perfect pretty girl, that nice set of abs that can completely ruin your day. Cell phones. Something that we're all connected with and realizing how much of a problem it's becoming that we're always having it there by our side, but we can't seem to take away from it. My name is Brittany McLean, and I want to talk to you guys about the time that I had to disconnect from my cell phone and I start realizing my surroundings. And I start realizing that maybe if I really started to disconnect, I could be more happier. And I'll start in grade 11 when I was traveling to India. I traveled to Rajasthan in a rural community where I was working on building a medical center for a school that I've been living in the community with for 2 weeks. And from there, I kept going on to places like Tanzania, Africa, and the Amazon rainforest, where I had to do the same thing because of the company's policy that I was traveling with. They required that you disconnect from your cell phone. They didn't want you letting your parents know how you were doing, or your friends sharing Facebook posts, or even just talking to anyone through pictures. And at first, I was really frustrated with this. And going over in grade 11, of course, my biggest fear was I wasn't be able to talk to my mom. And they would send out emails to let them know that you're okay, but you couldn't speak to her personally. I thought that was kind of rude of them because I was experiencing it in India for the first time, and as a grade 11 student, I wanted to be telling everyone about it as it was happening. And as I start going on with these trips, and even throughout that one trip in India, I realized why it was so important to disconnect. And it became really cultural for me because I was seeing different experiences, and not even just the religious aspect, but I was just seeing how people are living without that cell phone in their hand. And it started in grade 11, as I mentioned before, and when I was in Rajasthan, there was a beautiful celebration going on with these girls. And all of these girls were dancing around, and I realized that not one of them had a cell phone. Of course, being in rural India and having the money that they have, they probably couldn't afford one, but I realized what it was like to be in something that people didn't have a phone on them, because we weren't allowed to have them either. People were dancing, and there was girls singing and laughing, and even the girls that were looking in were fully engaged with the surroundings that we were in. Not one of them was trying to Snapchat it, or share photos, or was over in the back tweeting in the corner. And I realized how much more engaged I was becoming by not having to try to take these pictures to try to share it online immediately. And then I went to another ceremony that happened in Tanzania, and it was our closing ceremony. And this we were lucky enough to do with the kids from grade primary to 6, where we all gathered outside and listened to the elder thank us. And I realized when this was happening that everyone again was actively engaged. Now this amazed me because there was primary kids and grade 6 kids who were all just happy to be there, and they were really engaged in the moment. You could tell that they were really listening to what the elder had to say. And then I thought back to my university classrooms, and as interesting as some of my classes were, no matter what, I could always look out into my class and see one of my classmates on their cell phone. It's almost like a habit for us to just pick it up and just to go on something as soon as we get distracted right away. And we don't realize how much we're actually losing when we're taking away from our phone for even that split second. When your friend says something to you and then you look down because someone else said something, you're disconnecting from that moment. Even when you're at a concert or you're at a dance and you're trying to Snapchat it and you don't think that you're losing that moment, you really are, because you're missing so much more around you because you're trying to capture it on this. So in grade 11, this was kind of a hard concept for me to comprehend because I was trying to go through so much as I came back from India, back to Canada. And there was poverty issues and realizing that's a totally different world out there. But one of the main issues that I couldn't understand was how that people were so happy who had nothing. And I know it sounds super cliche, but they were really the happiest people that I was ever meeting in my life. And their culture was incredible. And then something unique happened to me. I was able to meet this girl in Tanzania, Africa, where she asked me to take her picture. And of course I had to ask my facilitators because we were required to not take pictures of strangers, and we had to make them first and become friends, so that we didn't have pictures with strangers, we had pictures with our friends. But since she kept insisting, they allowed me to do it. So I took her picture, and she started pointing at her camera, and then pointing at me, and then pointing at the camera, and then pointing at her, and was doing it again and again. And I didn't realize that she had never seen herself in a photograph before, and what the translator said is she might have never even seen herself at all. I started thinking that was crazy because I get the photograph card, they don't really have cameras there, but how could she not look in a mirror? Then I realized there wasn't any mirrors in the tent I was living or the mud huts that they were staying in. And then I realized this might have been the first time this girl was seeing herself. Maybe it wasn't, but it was definitely the first time in a long time. and she was generally happy with what she saw. She was so excited over her smile that she was smiling even bigger every time she looked at it. And she kept pointing to her necklaces and her jewelry, and she was just amazed at how beautiful she was. And then I thought back to my reality back in Canada, and I think this is when it kind of hit me that I was super attached to my phone in a way I didn't want to be. Because I realized that every time that I go to take a picture or a selfie, I have to take it in different angles, with different clothing, or with different lighting. We actually have cell phone cases now that you can have a light that will make your cheeks glow perfectly, and so that you look a perfect way, so that you can get more likes on Instagram. And then when you post it, you want to keep looking to see who's liking it, why this other person isn't liking it, and who's commenting on it, and who's calling you pretty, and who's not calling you pretty, and why this selfie got more likes than this selfie. It became super overwhelming. And I'm not trying to downplay the rest of the problems that this girl was going through at all, because there was a lot more that she's struggling with, but I became so envious. She was so happy with what she looked like for the first time. It really hit me that I became not a self-absorbed person, but I was really falling into what everyone else thought of me. And I knew it was because of my phone, because I was seeing all these beautiful people all the time, that I kept putting myself down. And of course, becoming a 19 to 20-year-old, this is when it hit hard, because I start going through all these things that a 19 to 20-year-old person goes through, and I was struggling with school, and I didn't know where I wanted to do when I graduated, and if I was ready to move, and my boyfriend dumped me and start dating this new girl, and all these problems start coming out, and I've been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And I start thinking back to these communities and how happy they were, and how can I have so much and be so sad, and they have absolutely nothing and still be so happy? And then I start researching statistics, and I realize that suicide was the leading cause of death in adolescence to middle age, which would be my age. And then it got even more scary when suicide didn't just become a word to me, but it became something that I actually attempted. The one thing that kept me going throughout all of my thoughts was the fact that another world was possible. And one of the stories that stuck with me and kept with me the entire time was the story of Shinga. And she was a little girl that I met in India. And she was about 2 or 3 years old. They weren't exactly sure, because she was an orphan and she'd been passed around from community to community in order to survive. She was at the lowest caste system, so no one really cared that she didn't have a birth certificate, because in India she didn't matter. But the thing about Shinga was that a smile never left her face. And she was always smiling and looking to play, and she was just so full of joy. In the photo here, she's actually carrying a brick, because she really wanted to help us at the medical center. And it wasn't just Shinga's insane courage of living the life that she was, or her intense need to help, or just that beautiful smile. It was what Shinga taught me that impacted me the most. And it is that smile that I think changed my life. Because there's so often that we're going through life and we're doing things for reasons to share it on social media. And you realize that when you're getting to this stage in your life, because all of your friends are doing it too. And people question, like, are you going to Africa to actually help, or are you going to get a picture so that you can get likes on it? There's actually news articles about it now, about how volunteerism is becoming such a big thing, because people are making themselves feel and look good, and then of course they look good on social media, and so what's not another like? And I began to think, are we eating healthy because we want to eat healthy, or because we want to post that we're eating healthy so that people think that we're fitness gurus? Or are we traveling because we want to travel, or because we really want that picture in Thailand with an elephant, because who doesn't want that? And I'm not saying that taking pictures while we're going is a problem. That's not what I'm trying to say at all, because of course I have beautiful pictures and I like to remember them too. What I'm saying, when it comes to a point that social media is taking over our lives and we're not connected in the way that we should be, that's when it becomes the problem. And when I was going through all of these thoughts and dealing with my depression, I kept thinking of Shinga and her beautiful smile. And it's the one thing that kept me going, because I realized that another world is possible. A world where you can judge yourself on just seeing yourself on your first photo and realizing that you're beautiful. And that you can be happy sincerely for what you have with your family and your friends. And this girl only had one outfit. She had mats in her hair and bugs running through them. But that smile never left Shinga's face. And she taught me the biggest lesson, and I don't think she'll ever know. And maybe someday I'll be able to tell her. But Shinga truly saved my life. Thank you.